Hi everyone, my name is Lacey and today we're going to talk a little bit about Pug. Now Pug is actually an HTML preprocessor, and what that means is that you're actually able to, within a Pug template, type out shorthand versions of HTML code that will get rendered out for you in proper HTML semantic matter after the fact. Now it's great that you're able to type in shorthand HTML, but why else would you use Pug? Now there's tons of really awesome things that you can actually use within Pug. You can add in variables that get displayed directly within your HTML. You can render out things within if statements. You can set up else as well. You can iterate through loops. You can set up mixins that directly get rendered out into your HTML. So tons and tons of great awesome stuff that you can do with Pug. Now today we actually have an example set up for you guys here with 8 steps, so that we can get a little bit more comfortable with Pug to see what exactly it can do. Now for those of you that have not used Pug before, it's okay, it's not that hard to learn, it's actually really simple. Now if you are initializing it for the first time within an empty repository or an empty folder or a project, you actually do have to install it through terminal using a node package. So what you would actually type in is npm install pug to get that set up, that node package set up within your project folder. Now today what we're actually going to use is CodePen, and CodePen actually already has the functionality set up to use Pug templates without having to worry about terminal or node or any of that stuff as well. Now the way you do activate and set up Pug within CodePen is really simple. So over here in the top left corner we're going to click on our gear icon, and we're just going to make sure that under HTML preprocessor Pug is set up. So really important to set that up first before we start typing out, or we're going to end up running into errors. So I'm going to click save and close here. And then we're going to go ahead and start running through some of our code examples. So it looks like we have a few options here. We have problem number 1 is asking us to set up a header with an H2 and a paragraph. Now when you're typing in Pug, one of the reasons why it is a little bit more shorthand is because you don't actually have to use angle brackets to enclose your tags. If I want to create a header section, it's as easy as typing in the word header. I don't have to worry about setting up an opening tag or a closing tag, working with brackets or slashes or anything of the sort. I just say header and my header section is created for me. Super simple. Now problem 1 is also asking us to set up an H2 and a paragraph. Now the H2 and the paragraph are actually nested inside of that header. Now typically in HTML you can actually write that all out in one line and that's perfectly fine. But in Pug, the way you set up parent-child relationships within your elements is actually to indent. So indentation is super important. If you indent improperly, you may end up with sections that are nested, not in the way that you originally intended to. So what we're going to do is within our header on the next line, we're just going to indent with our tab here and set up our H2. And we're going to use our trustworthy hello world to see if this works. Now over here on the right hand side, hello world did render. Yay! So setting up a child element inside of a parent, like we have H2 inside of header, super easy. All we have to do is just make sure we indent. Alright, now the next thing I have to do is set up a paragraph. So I'm going to set up a paragraph here and I'm going to say this is a paragraph. And there I have my paragraph rendered for me over on the right. Nice and easy. Alright, now my next problem is asking me to set up a section with the class of fruits. Now remember what I told you about indenting. If you hit enter, you're automatically indented inside of the header. So I'm going to have to hit my delete key here to back out a indent. And I'm going to say section. And to add a class, all I have to do is say dot fruits. Now in typical HTML, you would usually say class equals fruits. You don't have to worry about that in Pug. Just say dot fruits and you have a section with the class fruits set up for you. Now inside of that section, I have to add a few more things in the next upcoming steps. So I have step 3 here, which is asking us to create a Pug comment that does not get rendered out by the HTML markup. So typically when we're typing out comments within HTML, that all gets rendered out to the browser. If you were to, not to the browser, but when you view your source code, you can actually see all those comments directly in there. And if you actually want to have a hidden comment that's only within the Pug template that does not get rendered out to the HTML, you can actually do that within Pug. The way we do that is on the next line here, we're going to put in 2 slashes and a dash. And we're going to say this comment does not get rendered into the HTML. Now this comment right here was super easy to set up. All we did was 2 slashes and the dashes. And the dashes make sure that this does not get rendered out. So it's super easy to set up. Alright. So our next step, step number 4, we have a variable whose value is rendered out in the HTML via an H2. Cool. So the next step is to create a variable. So on the next slide, I don't really want this to get rendered out, so I'm going to put a dash, and I'm going to say variable. And I'm going to go ahead and call this one title. Okay, just a simple title variable that I can render out inside of an H2 tag. And I'm going to say equals my fruits. Alright, so I have a variable that's called title, and I'm going to render that out of my H2 on the next line. And the way I render out a variable, or the value of variables, I use my hashtag or my pound sign, and within curly braces the name of the variable that I want to call, which is just title. And over here on the right hand side, you'll see we have an H2 with my fruits in it. Awesome. So really simple to set up an H2. Just use your hashtag or your pound sign, and within curly braces the name of the variable that you want to use. So super simple stuff. Alright, now let's see if we can get a little bit more in depth on the next line here for the next problem. So problem number 5 is asking us to create an each statement that lists 3 fruits from an array of fruits. So we have 3 fruits, let's say apple, peach, banana, and we want to render each one of those out within, say for example, a paragraph tag. We can actually do that within Pug. So the first thing I'm going to need is actually an array of elements to iterate through. So on the next line, I'm going to create a variable called fruits, and I'm going to set it to equal to, within square brackets, so I know I'm initializing my array, 3 fruits. So I'm going to set up apple, and set up peach, and also add in a banana. So I have my variable fruits with apple, peach, and banana inside of that. Now that variable does not get rendered out. If you see over here on the right, I cannot see my list of items. I'm actually going to go ahead and use an each so that I can render each one out within its own paragraph tag. So on the next line, I'm going to say each item in each item in fruits. And on the next line, I'm going to indent there and say P equals item. And once I do that, I have my apple, peach, and banana getting rendered out for me. So if you can tell, I have my variable fruits array that has apple, peach, and banana inside of it. And for each item inside of that fruits array, I'm going to create a paragraph tag and render out that individual item. Super cool. If I wanted this paragraph to be an H2, so I rendered 3 H2s for those items within that list, I could. And also another thing I can do is switch out item. By default in the documentation, the examples show it by using item for those each statements, but you can make it each thing inside of fruits, and it'll still render out for you as well. So for each thing in fruits, render out an apple thing, a peach thing, a banana thing, whatever it is that you want to render out. So you can always switch these out if you need to. Alright, so that was the problem that we had set up there for the fruits array. The next problem, while the list is loading up, we're going to go ahead and talk about that there. We're actually going to set up a section with the ID of truth. Now sections, we created those before. We want to make sure that we indent all the way back out so we're still not nested in there. Creating a section is as easy as typing in the word section. But to actually use that with an ID instead of a class, right? Last time for the class we did dot truth for a class, but we don't want a class, we want an ID. So instead of a dot, we're going to switch that out for the hashtag or pound sign. Section truth. We now have a section with the ID of truth. Super easy. Now the next problem is asking us inside of that section to create a case. So what a case is actually going to do in our instance is we're going to create a variable, and we're going to set it to a certain variable, to a certain value. So that variable has a certain value, and what we're going to do is set up cases to test for what that value is. So we're going to set up a case for when that value is true, do something, or when that value is false, do something else. And we're also going to set up a fallback in case none of those cases actually occur. So within my truth section here, I'm going to create a case. That's the first step. So I'm going to say case test. And when, almost forgot to set up my variable first. So before that, I'm going to make sure, and also let me label this, it's a little bit easier to see. So inside of my section, I'm going to create an H2 that's called case test, so I can see exactly what it is I'm doing here. Split that up from my fruits. And inside of there, I'm going to set up a variable. So dash variable, I'm going to call it test me and set it to equal to true. And now I set up my case test. So my case is going to test when true. Let's do when false first. When false, we're going to render out a paragraph text that says the case is false. Right? And on the next line, if you realize nothing is rendering out just yet, I have my H2 getting rendered out that says case test. I have my variable called test me that's set to true. And my case test says when this is false, the case is false. But it's not, right? It's true. We can see the value of it is true. So on the next line, let's render something out for true. So when true, open up a paragraph tag, and we're going to say the case is true. Now, this is really cool because we have a when it's false, when it's true, but we also should set up a fallback as well. So what we're going to do here is the fallback usually, you always have fallbacks in an if and else statement, something that happens when those cases aren't met. In this case, what we're going to do is set up a default. That's actually the term for it within a case statement. And for the default, we're going to say P, the case is, and we're going to go ahead here and use our hashtag and our curly braces, set it to true. Oh, and that's actually my bad for not putting this here with the quotes. Default, the case is hashtag true. Awesome. So we have the case is false, the case is true, and the case is the value, test me. Not the actual value inside it, but the variable here. So test me. So we know the case is true. If I were to change this out to false, what I would get rendered out is the case is false. Since my case is true, I'm going to say the case is true. And if any other value were inside of this test me, I would get the case is and then the value of that variable inside of that. So cases are definitely really awesome. You can use them to render out different options depending on your case or whatever it is that you want to use. Alright, so let's head over to, now that we finish up with the cases, the next problem, which is creating a footer with a link. So next line, I'm going to make sure that I am not indented anymore. Open up a footer, and then I need to set up a link. Now again, remember, we're not worrying about opening and closing tags or angle brackets. So to create a link, I should type in A and the link that I want to link out to, which is Google. Now that does create, it starts to create a link for me, but I do have to make sure that I add in my href attribute. To add in an attribute to an element, all you actually do is enclose it within parentheses, and you add in the attribute that you want to apply to it, which in this case is the href that sends it over to google.com. Now, of course, you can add in multiple attributes just like you can in regular HTML. So if I want to set the target to _blank, I could. And then it's going to open up Google for me in a new window, as you can tell over here. So that was it for our instructions section here. Super, super easy, as you can tell. We were able to start really simple by creating simple elements like a header with an H2 and a paragraph, and we learned about the indenting and parent-child relationships. We also have set up our section with a class, right, which we know now that you actually add classes by just appending that dot before the name of the class. We set up variables that we rendered out. We set up arrays that we actually iterated through each array and put them, each individual item, inside a paragraph. We set up sections with IDs, and we also ran a case test that actually tested the value of a variable for truth or false. And we also set up a default for a fallback in case we have any other value set up inside of there. And then again, the very last thing we did was set up a link with an attribute, right? We have an href and a target attribute that we added in within parentheses, and then the name of the link we wanted to add. So as you guys can tell, tons and tons of awesome stuff set up within Pug here that you can play around with, including the comments that don't get rendered out as well. So you have tons of options of things that you can tackle with Pug. If you're interested in more, definitely make sure to check out the documentation for Pug as well. There's tons of great stuff in there, everything from interpolation to mix-ins to lots of great items that you can play around with. So that was about it for today's lesson on Pug. I hope you guys were able to enjoy it and learn a little bit more about the HTML preprocessor and use it in your next project. So I'm going to make sure to put in the code at the bottom sections of the video down below. I'm going to put the starter template and as well as the answer or the full section of the code as well for the links for these code pens so you guys can play around with them and hopefully you're able to enjoy Pug a little bit more. Alright, so that was it for Pug. I hope you guys enjoy and we'll see you guys for the next video.